Levelling up. It's the election promise that has echoed through the left-behind areas of the UK. And yesterday, the Chancellor finally coughed up.
I'm launching the first round of the Levelling Up Fund today, inviting applications from local areas across the United Kingdom.
But less than 24 hours later, the Prime Minister was forced to sail to his rescue after allegations that the cash is being spent disproportionately in Conservative areas.
I've asked about this, and I'm told that the criteria are entirely objective, and they look at all sorts of data, poverty, employment, and so on.
This is Richmond in North Yorkshire, a market town and a tourist hotspot, and especially when you compare it to other places around here, it's far from deprived. And yet yesterday it was ranked priority one, top of the list, to get access to a £4.8 billion Levelling Up Fund. That was announced in the budget by the Chancellor, who is also the MP for Richmond. On the government's own scale of deprivation, with one as the most deprived, Richmond is 450 out of 533. 80 miles south in Sheffield, there are some areas that go as low as 12 on that scale, and yet they've been classified as priority 2 for the Levelling Up Fund. The Sheffield City Region Mayor wants to know why.
It's nakedly political. We urgently need some transparency from the Chancellor about the decision-making process. I don't think by any independent, fair metric that can be the right approach, and I want the Chancellor to clarify as a matter of urgency.
But back in Richmond, their priority 1 status was well received. Do you think that's fair?
Good. Well, yeah, he lives here.
Do you think that's why
I would do exactly the same.
Do you think it's one of the most deprived places?
No, I don't know.
So do you think it's a good thing that Rishi Sunak has put Richmond top of the list?
Yeah, bless him.
For years, in fact, governments have left the rural areas behind. I think it's great to have a Chancellor that recognises the rural plight. And when I say rural, I don't just mean Richmondshire, I mean the rural plight throughout the country. Because that levelling up was required.
And it isn't just the Levelling Up Fund that is under fire. More cash from the Towns Fund was dished out yesterday to mostly Tory areas. Rishi Sunak used his budget to confirm extra spending in a string of towns across England. He said the funds were to rebalance economic investment. He's giving more than £1 billion to 45 towns. But of the 56 constituencies which will benefit from these grants, 47 are Conservative, only 9 are Labour. One of those seats is Newark, where the MP is Community Secretary Robert Jenrick. In a statement today, his department said he had nothing to do with the decision.
But what we saw yesterday was an announcement for funding allocated and no accompanying release of documents or announcements of how that decision-making was actually carried out. And it isn't right to reduce people's future prosperity to electoral politics.
The government has insisted the methodology is clear and fair. The bidding process for the first round of the Levelling Up Fund will run until mid-June.
Well, I've been speaking with the former Conservative Chancellor, Ken Clarke, about the budget and UK trade post-Brexit. First, I put it to him whether politically tax rises are anathema to the Tory party.
Well, they're anathema to the media and everybody else at the moment. We've gone through a very funny phase. In more normal times, I'm glad to say when I was Chancellor, everybody knew that taxes sometimes had to go up and taxes sometimes went down, depending on the actual state and needs of the economy. And at the moment, taxes need to go up. Ordinary public expenditure is going to be constrained for some considerable time. There are areas where we're going to have to spend more on things like social care, and particularly on all the skills training, retraining and job search that has got to be made to work and has got to be done on a proper scale to rescue a lot of people from a crisis in their lives and to help a lot of the young. And the bulk of the public actually know perfectly well, as these colossal sums are being paid, this is being paid on their account. And they're going to have to look forward to contributing through taxes.
Well, but then there's corporation tax. Companies are going to be paying more tax, a lot more tax. that is in fact going to mean a lot of companies simply leave and go to Europe.
No, because the rates of corporation tax are higher in most European countries, with the possible exception of Ireland. George Osborne had a theory we were going to attract inward investment by competing with Ireland, by having a very low corporation tax rate, and they could put all the bits of their business that earned any money into as a tax haven. We never got there. It didn't work. And our corporation tax level is very low. I personally, I think, would have been a little less cautious in raising it.
Nevertheless, it is a pretty grim start to life under Brexit, isn't it?
Well, the combination of Brexit and COVID is about the most unfortunate, disastrous coincidence that we've faced for a very long time. We've still got negotiations going on with the Europeans. We will have negotiations going for some years, because it's in both our interests that we have the minimum of friction at our borders and we actually don't damage too much the trade in both directions, which is important to all of us.
In the meantime, who's going to trust us? Let's look at Northern Ireland, the meat. Now, the meat paperwork, in other words, for getting it across the notional border in the Irish Sea, is going to be postponed. That has not been negotiated and it's not been accepted by Europe. What are we playing at?
Well, that is a very real risk. We signed this deal quite recently. The Prime Minister personally negotiated it in the first place with Varadkar, then the Taoiseach in Ireland. We ratified it. Parliament was persuaded to ratify it. And if we are in global Britain to continue to be a trusted trading partner, one of the countries that's admired for its high standards and its following the rule of law, following the rules-based international order, we've got to stick to that. The prospects, for example, of alleviating the impact on our financial services industry, which is probably the biggest single financial hit, economic hit we've taken so far, are damaged. If they take the view, well, there's no point in negotiating with the British, because you know perfectly well they won't regard themselves bound by what they signed up to within a few months of doing it.
Ken Clarke, thank you very much indeed for talking with us.
Pleasure, Tom.